is up? This is the Keyholing podcast. With me today, I have a very special guest who many of you definitely have products from. We're going to be talking about AmeriCAN manufacturing, Aves engineering. How's it going, brother?
Hey, how's it going?
And the first question is, a lot of people, this is confusing for a lot of people. Is it Aves or Aves? You hear both frequently.
Yeah, I mean, you could say both. I pronounce it Aves. The basis of the origin of that is Aves is the Latin root word for birds, the whole avian species. You know, it's the root word, I guess you could say, without getting into the terminology, the biological terminology. So, you know, that's where the word comes from. But depending on what part of the world you're in, it can be pronounced a couple of different ways. But I like the Latin pronunciation, Aves, personally.
And you see, he references bird, the very sick bird logo. I've got it pulled up on my screen now. So for those that don't know, what does Aves do? What products do you offer? Things of that nature.
I guess the best way to kind of explain it is to start from the beginning. Initially we were offering Glock rails and Glock components. I'm sure everybody's familiar with the 3D printable Glock frames that exist. Going all the way back to the beginning when they had the screw-in rear rails. That was our first initial product, was just the G17 and G19 rail kit. And from there, we've really expanded outward from just the offering of that. I mean, I remember back in the beginning, during the COVID times, it was about 2019, early 2020, I had initially started making those components and just offering them for sale via direct message on Keybase. Not sure how many people remember that, but that was quite the time. And then eventually we started our website, avesrails.com, and then, as 3D printing kind of expanded of what it could do, we expanded as well. So we now offer a whole line of Glock-oriented rails, as well as a bunch of components, rails and such, for other handgun projects like the SD9, the Smith & Wesson gun, OK Boomer rails, things like that. A bunch of different handgun components. And then we also expanded into the Mac 11 line. So the Mac 11 is a super popular platform for 3D printing. And there was a need for a lot of components that go into those builds. So we offer a whole line of Mac 11 uppers and replacement components that will also drop right into a lot of old guns too. So, I mean, you could take our bolt, our extractors, all that stuff, and drop them into closed bolt Cobra guns and things like that. So, we've kind of expanded out from just 3D printed related projects to just general repair and upgrade of existing firearms as well. So we really follow quite closely along with the 3D printed, oriented projects. But yeah, it's our product line expands all the time. And then we also do contract manufacturing as well. So there's a few different firearm related projects out there that I'm sure some people are familiar with that we're doing contract manufacturing for. So we are, we've expanded quite a lot from the beginning.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. And so did you have an engineering background before this? Yeah,
I mean, not necessarily in the firearms industry. My background was actually in plastic injection molding. I started in the plastics industry back when I was in high school. Started as just a technician, setting up molds and starting up machines out on the production floor. And then over the years, I gradually climbed the ladder. And right before COVID, my plastics career, I was actually a tool designer. So I was designing molds for plastic injection molding, and I primarily was working in tool and die shops and overseeing the design and build of a lot of different tools. And doing sampling and first run production or first article stuff, and without getting too far into the weeds of that whole world, but yeah, I have a somewhat of a plastics and metalworking background. That's kind of how I got into this stuff. But fun fact, I had never actually programmed a CNC machine before.
Really?
I worked in shops that had them. Tool and die shops are using CNC mills and lathes all day to make stuff for tools and dies. But I had never actually touched one. I was always on the plastic side. So it was a little bit of a task when I got to the point of actually needing to manufacture some of these parts myself. But I'd been around it long enough, and I'd seen it. I'd been adjacent to it that I learned how to do programming in Fusion 360 and MasterCam and some other softwares that won't get too deep into the weeds on that, but I learned what I needed to learn to get the job done, and yeah, it's been going from there.
That's what's important, right? So how do you view the it's so cool that your story, how that like came full circle, being like plastics and then coming back to guns and like being in like a different area of plastic and machining and things like that. How do you view the relationship between, so I kind of look at these things at like two levels. So I have the individual level, which you talked about earlier, like the right to repair, like things you can do on a personal level, and the commercial level, like so to consumers and businesses. So traditionally, the idea is like making a gun for a significant amount of time has been making it yourself with like a tube, right? Like a tube and a nail. That's really all you need. Mm-hmm. And how do you view that like relationship moving forward? Like, do you think we see more parts kits in other industries as it becomes more economical for people to learn how to repair their own appliances, learn how to repair their own things around their house?
Yeah, I mean, there is a little bit of I'd say there's a little bit of a disconnect between the whole right to repair and making your own stuff from scratch. There isn't as much regulation around building something completely on your own. Like if you wanted to make your own toaster, you're completely allowed to make your own toaster. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Now, if you wanted to repair your toaster that you bought from someone else, that's a much deeper argument of whether or not the company you bought it from should be obligated to help you, or at the very least, not stop you from repairing the thing that you own. Mm-hmm. I think there's a little bit of a disconnect. I think the regulation of making something yourself is a lot harder to justify, on the legal side. So I don't think there's going to be a super, obviously you have the whole connotation of firearms independent of the whole conversation, the whole question we're having right now. But, the making it yourself, I don't think is as regulated as, repairing something, I guess you could say.
No, definitely. You're totally right. And I'm glad you drew that distinction, because when you're repairing or trying to fix anything yourself, essentially you void the warranty if it has one anytime you touch it, basically. Mm-hmm. So like, even if you have the thought to do it, I'm just wondering if like a round of deregulation happens. This is just pure speculation, because I think like as the economy like continues to take shape, like people are like continuing to struggle, things are expensive, which I've got Aves pulled up right now. I want to take a sidebar. We'll mention this a couple times. Incredible prices that you were able to get these to. You guys have sales all the time. I don't want to say all the time. You have a great sales multiple times a year. And I just view it as, I think that's a lever that's going to be pulled as far as, even as warranties are voided and things like that, which my argument being is I think that warranties are less and less useful because they cover less and less. So it may get to a point where like the public says, fuck it. That's just a general thought I have. But I love that's part of what I love about what you do in 3D printed guns is you get the parts to people at very reasonable prices that they can't machine themselves, right? So how far away is the home machining system from producing, for example, I've got on the screen a Mac Bolt. Like, so go ahead.
I mean, that's a good, I would like to, I guess I'd like to say that the thing that is causing such a overturning of the current status is it's the accessibility of the parts. There's two aspects to it. There's, can you just make the stuff yourself, or how accessible are the base components? And that's kind of the thing. Like, it's like repairing your phone. It's super easy to repair your phone nowadays because you can get a new replacement screen directly from China. You can get a lot of spare components to replace or to repair phones yourselves. And as the prevalence of that stuff has become greater, the manufacturers have tried to lock it down so that you can't repair it. I think the same thing is going to sort of happen with the manufacturing equipment. Now, you see that immediately with the 3D printing stuff because it's super accessible. Your point with like the Mac Bolt, as much as I would love to sell machines to manufacture firearms or firearm components at home on your own, there are some physical limitations just based on physics that make it very difficult to do stuff like machining a Mac Bolt. The Mac Bolts are made out of steel, which is significantly tougher to machine than aluminum. So a lot of your, like, if you go on Amazon and look up your desktop mills and things like that, they spin at extremely high RPMs because they have essentially routers for spindles. But the machine it's very lightweight. To cut steels and things like that, you need just pure mass to dampen the vibrations and the cutting load and all of that stuff. So to efficiently cut steel, you need higher horsepower than what a desktop machine can provide, and you also need just physically more mass. Take, for example, our one of the first machines that I had ever purchased. I bought a Tormach, a 440, PCNC 440. You can look those up. It's a desktop mill, but it is not a desktop mill per se like what you would buy on Amazon. It is I think it's like 300 or 400 pounds, and it's actually a pretty decent weight machine. So it will actually cut steels and things like that. But it's purely, it's always going to cost a significant amount of money to ship a machine like that. It's always going to cost a significant amount of money to produce something like that. So I mean, it will get cheaper and it will get more accessible, and it's purely a matter of time. But I don't think it's ever going to be to a point that every single person can just buy one on Amazon like they can a 3D printer. There are just physical limitations to doing that stuff. You know what I mean? Definitely.
And anyone looking, like I've seen this recommended by Ivan and a few others, because of how restricted you are with shipping those, basically, Facebook Marketplace is normally going to be your best hope, right? Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, the Facebook Marketplace stuff, again, it's a big thing. Let's say you find like a Bridgeport, a manual mill on Facebook Marketplace. You still need a truck to move it. You don't need it, but a forklift would be very, very ideal for moving the thing on and off of the truck. It's still a large physical thing, but yes, you're going to get a significantly better deal on a quality piece of used machine on Facebook Marketplace than you would buying new. But you still have those physical limitations. It's not buying a manual mill is a much larger endeavor than buying a Bamboo Lab printer on Amazon and having it shipped to your door. So
no, definitely.
Yeah.
And I also want to point out like the difficulty starting, right? Like the Bamboo Lab and a few other printers you can order right now, you can essentially print out of the box. Mm-hmm. Like that's not going to be something you can do with like a CNC machine at home.
I mean, I learned how to do it. It's not impossible, but there is a major learning curve to it, and there are like AI tools that will help you program and stuff like that now. It's getting closer to being like a 3D printer where you just put your file in and slice it per se, but it will never be the same. It's with a 3D printer, you're starting with nothing and you're using the same tool to build something, right? You're just squirting out plastic and moving the tool head around. With machining, there's, the machine itself, the kinematics of the machine. There is actually holding your workpiece, because rather than additive manufacturing, it's subtractive. So you'll have to take your piece of material and you have to hold on to your material somehow. There are nuances to that. You have cutting tool selection. You have a myriad of different tools for different features. It's not as cut and dry as, put the model in, slice it, drive the tool head around and squirt out the plastic. Not to say that somebody isn't capable of learning that. I mean, obviously, there are millions of machinists around the world. I think the bigger thing is like manufacturing has become so. I don't want to say that people aren't getting into it, younger people, but they really aren't. There's a serious lack of people interested in manufacturing or machining in general. We really just need more people to get into it, and that I think is an avenue in which the 3D printing space can kind of move into. I would like to see, and I'd be more than happy to assist on, super, not rudimentary, but DIY gun-related projects where there's actually a machining element, a manufacturing element involved. It seems like there's such a focus on how can we make this stuff all 3D printed, when perhaps you could, make something significantly higher quality if you added in a little bit of machining. I think there's a definite value in learning how to do that stuff, and I think people need to start learning more of that.
No, and that takes us into kind of the next topic as far as like American manufacturing and like why you think it's the state it's in. And like from what I gather, like you mentioned, people not being into it, and I think that's a lot of trades right now, right? Like as far as careers that are needing like a youthful injection, and so I really do like. I like that you mentioned the additive and subtractive. So is there a point where subtractive at home will pass the low barrier of entry that additive is? Like not as far as like even getting the machines, but as far as like the barrier of knowledge entry. And because I say in that, like as machining and things continue to get cheaper, easier to do at home, like filaments are getting stronger. There's filaments being experimented with right now that are stronger as well. So do you view subtractive as catching up to additive at home in the future?
No, I mean, I really don't. There's just too much. There's too much to it. You're never going to be able to do, subtractive machining on steels or tool steels or any of that stuff. Perhaps some aluminum. It's always going to be too big, too heavy, too loud, and too much power consumption in most cases for you to do in your average apartment. You know what I mean? It's never going to be a parallel to a bamboo lab machine. You know what I mean? That's always going to be the apartment manufacturer. And I do think, I don't think it's even necessary for subtractive manufacturing to catch up per se, or to scale down in size to the 3D printers. I don't think it's necessary. You got to remember, we've been smashing rocks together and refining them and making them into metals for, I don't even know, like 10,000, 15,000 years as human beings. We've been making polymers for, at most, a couple hundred years. At most. Probably less than that. Probably more closer to 100 years. I don't know. We've barely scratched the surface with polymers. It is, for all intents and purposes, on a humankind scale, we're overlooking uncharted territory with polymers. Back when I was in the injection molding field, I was reading papers and stuff about different processes of cross-linking polymer chains and doing different chemical processes to very, very sophisticated engineering materials. That it was a lot of just throwing things at the wall and seeing what stuck, sort of experimenting just to see what the polymers would do. And we've seriously barely scratched the surface. I think that in the future, subtractive machining won't need to catch up to additive, because additive manufacturing is going to be so close to being as good as metals or I should say it would be so close as being as good as a lot of metals that it doesn't need to go the other way if
No, for sure. And I think that's the ideal setup, right? Like, in embracing this, and that's what you all have done as a business, as far as like combining 3D printing with machined parts. And I think that's the ideal gun setup, right? Building as much as you can with 3D printing, but not sacrificing like durability. One thing that comes to my mind immediately is the feed ramps on the Macs, on the Mac Daddy, which you guys added, and then that increased durability significantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a place for that, and that's kind of what I alluded towards with the whole firearm projects that are bringing in more durable parts that require a little bit of extra manufacturing. I'd like to see more of these open source projects that are smaller scale like that, where you and 10 of your friends, you guys set up a machine shop in somebody's garage and you can manufacture these parts for yourself. And for everybody that doesn't have access to that, that's where somebody like me can come in and distribute a lot of the stuff and help out where it can be helped out. I know there's such a hyper fixation on it must be DIY. I must make this in my bathtub and in my dorm room sort of, or my bedroom sort of project. I don't think it needs to be that way. You know what I mean? It's like, we're allowed to talk to each other.
No, definitely. No, absolutely. I think you're totally right. And there is a novelty to it, right? Like I think you'll admit that, and anyone like that doesn't even know about 3D printed guns will admit there's a novelty to printing it in a closet, right? I made the entire gun in this closet, and it's like, okay, that's very cool. The ECM, very cool that people can do that. But at the same time, I love you mentioned the point of like getting together with some buddies and finding a place where you can machine. Maybe a buddy has an extra garage spot he's not using, or something of that nature, and really making it a community effort as far as, hey, I want to machine this for this project. Hey, let's do like a small run of this, and kind of developing everyone's skills. I think that's like an ideal scenario as far as it's much more manageable than approaching it alone, trying to find space on your own, trying to figure it out on your own.
Yeah. There's not a real, there's no need to lone wolf the whole thing all the time. There really needs to be a development of the community about the whole thing. And, that's kind of to allude back to your, the state of American manufacturing. If more people adopted that mindset, they would be more inclined to work in a manufacturing environment. That's the best place to learn how to do this stuff too. What better way to learn how to do CNC machining or any other sort of manufacturing task like welding or fabricating sheet metal or anything like that? What better way to learn that than have your employee pay you to learn it? And I can think of dozens of companies around in my general vicinity where I live in Wisconsin that would gladly take apprentices, anybody willing to learn. It's a good pathway for a younger person that doesn't have a calling in life that they absolutely must do. If you definitely want to be a doctor, don't not do that to go be a welder.
No, definitely. But at the same time, like, the well is impossibly deep. Like, you can go, in theory, you can go as deep as you want to with this, right? Like, that's something that I think is really intriguing, and like something I am going to be pushing young people toward now, because just talking with you about it briefly, like, this is such a versatile, useful skill you're learning. And you mentioned, it doesn't even have to be specific to this. You started in plastics, and that kind of developed your interest, and then you expanded from there. And so I think just really that entire engineering field is really great for kids to get into, especially if you're already interested in guns. There's a lot, I say kids, the 3D printed community has a lot of people in that 18 to 21 range that are maybe outsiders, maybe struggle with social contact, maybe avoid eye contact. And so I think that's a great environment to learn and pick up these skills.
It's a difficult environment, though. You kind of touch on a good point. So many of that 18 to 20-year-old group, that manufacturing is a tough place to get into if you don't have a thick skin per se. If you're not good in social situations, it can be kind of hard, but that shouldn't discourage you from continuing down the path. The old boomers that are in the shop that don't want to teach you anything, well, that's their problem. You're there for you. Don't let the old boomers that act like they don't want you in their shop because you're going to replace them. Don't let that discourage you.
No, definitely. And we talked earlier about that, about the fostering the community. And I will say, generally in non-related work environments, if people see you have a passion and want to learn, you will get helped. Not by everyone, right? You mentioned the boomers, and I think that is a problem in general with America right now, as far as pulling the ladder up behind them, where boomers simultaneously want a productive, informed, and who doesn't, a productive, informed young working class. That's awesome. That's great. But they're not always going to be friendly and approachable in the process. But generally, if you show a willingness to learn, people will help you.
Yeah, typically. I mean, it's very hit or miss. You know, I mean, it really depends on the shop too. I mean, I worked in lots of places where, you know, they wouldn't help you for anything, and you were just in the position you're in. If you're not in a good place where they are actively interested in teaching you stuff, find somewhere else to go. Someone out there will gladly take your enthusiasm. Yeah, it's there's a lot of nuances to it. Unfortunately, it seems like, oh, just learn how to do the stuff and that's it. But there's a lot of social context to it that, you know, I've noticed that a lot with like I really don't like them very much, but the founders on Twitter, you know, the VC kids that get a bunch of money and you know, they despise the manufacturing environment today because, you know, there's too much talking. There's too many salespeople. You gotta learn how to play the game. You know, the only way to be successful is to play the boomers game. You know, if you let them make you quit, well, then you're never gonna get ahead. You know, you gotta learn how to play the game.
Definitely.
I guess I don't know any better way to put it. You know,
I mean,
you kind of have to just get over it, and you know.
No, definitely. Like playing the game's a great phrase for it. Like learning how to talk to them, right? Like deferring. Like even if you even if you think they're wrong, like there is going to be like these awkward scenarios to navigate, but at the same time, it's possible. And like you said, it's not just one shop in one city that's hiring, right? Like there's gonna be like, if you're really interested and like want to find a place like that is passionate about it, it's possible.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, just don't let people put you down, and don't let people shut down you trying to learn stuff, you know. But at the same time, there's balance to it. You know, you're not going to be shop foreman in a year. You know, I mean, some of these guys that are in these shops, they've been there for, I mean, shit. When I worked in the plastics industry, I remember the first job I had in high school, it was like an apprenticeship program. I met guys that were on the factory floor that were quite literally like 70 years old, you know, and I'd ask them like, how long have you worked here? And a couple of them, there was two dudes in this one shop. A couple of them had worked there for quite literally 50 years. Like they had been there, they got out of high school and immediately started working at this shop. And then they stayed there forever and never moved up. You know, they never moved up. They were just like, yeah, whatever. You know, I like it.
I mean, like, and hey, like if that's your flow, like this economy could use thousands of those type of people right now.
Oh yeah. I mean, automation and AI can't replace them fast enough. You know what I mean?
No, definitely. And so
yeah, I mean, yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I like that you mentioned AI a couple times. Is there a point where, like, obviously, like, we were talking before briefly, like, you mentioned, like, if a machine stops, you have to run up there and, like, to make up for man hours to get it up and running. Is there a point where AI, and obviously there is a point, but how soon do you think that point is where AI is fully managing these shops? Like, I feel like a lot of people think it's, like, next week or next year, and I don't see that as being even relatively close to possible.
Yeah, no, I mean, you will always need, I would never, let me put it this way, regardless of the time that it takes, which that's a really hard thing to say, personally, I would say it's well beyond 20 to 30 years before I am not needed on a daily basis at our shop for something, right? AI will never have the dexterity of a human being, you know, that, I mean, it will someday, but not in my lifetime probably. AI will never have a physical body with the dexterity to do every single task. You know what I mean? The world is designed for human beings, and designing a human being replacement with a robot is extremely difficult, as you can see by numerous companies trying to do it for decades and not doing a very good job. Pretty good, but not extremely good. You know, I would never lay off or fire a technical person and replace them with an automated system. You know, you will always need that human being to oversee and drive the automation. You know, I mean, there's a robot at our shop running a machine right now as we speak. All it did was replace the operator. The operator is now doing other more important tasks that there is no automation for. You know, so automation is just going to make us more efficient. Automation, at least in the manufacturing space, it's just going to make you more efficient, and it's going to move the human being into more complex and more problems that are not, there's no AI oriented to solve those problems. So, you know, as we implement more automated machining cells, the same number of guys are just producing magnitudes more parts over time, you know. So
no, definitely, and that brings an important part, like you mentioned, like functionality, like scalability. That helps scalability a ton, right? Like having
massively. I mean, especially with the lack of new individuals coming into the space to, you know, help scale. You know, I mean, at the point that we're at, I don't even look for new operators. I look for ways to make my operators that I have right now more efficient. You know, remove them from doing the menial task of opening and closing the door all day, taking the part in and out. Move them onto something that is more valuable for a human being to be on, and more interesting too. I mean, who wants to stand there and open and close the door all day and take the same part in and out of the machine, you know?
No, definitely. And at the same time, giving them skills, and like they're going through their individual learning process and growing as an individual. And I think that's super important as far as building up American manufacturing, is connecting people and making people feel like they like own their position, they have autonomy, they are doing something important, right? Like, I think that may be a key to attracting people to the workforce, maybe.
Yeah, to some degree. I mean, there will always be those people, like the guy I mentioned before, that worked in the same shop doing the same thing all day, every day for 45, 50 years, and he was going to retire next week, and he was happy. There will always be a couple of those guys. That mindset will always be out there, because not everybody wants to be, CEO of the machine shop. Some people are content with just doing the same thing all day. Unfortunately, those people are going to get replaced, and they're probably going to get replaced pretty quickly. Now when we talk about like technical people, like people that are listening to this and people that are interested in stuff, like you and I, we're the ones who are going to reap the benefits of the AI and the automation. It's not just the CEOs that are going to have a gajillion dollars from automating away everybody's jobs. Our jobs are going to get physically easier and less stressful as AI propagates out into the workforce and, eliminates a lot of these menial tasks, which, I'm totally for.
No, definitely. And you did mention like there are going to be those few people. I really just think the benefits of the automation, as far as helping small businesses with scalability, helping individuals actually progress and learn more, be put in more complex situations than, like you said, opening and closing a door repeatedly. I think, unfortunately, that's just going to be like the sacrifice the industry makes. And I understand the appeal of wanting to do this like same repeated thing over and over, but I think there will still be ways to work that in as far as like not at the scale and menial level, but repeating the same processes maybe.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, automation is not, you kind of get back into the same aspect of when is it going to be accessible for the average consumer, but on a small business scale. I mean, like we were talking about when would a milling machine or something like that, a subtractive machine, be as accessible as a 3D printer that a normal person would buy for in their apartment. It's automation, the physical robots as well as the software, the AI software, is becoming cheaper and cheaper and more accessible. That small businesses, I mean, 10 years ago, the automation cells that we have would have been a massive undertaking for a company of our size. The industry as a whole has created these automation systems that are super, super easy to implement. So, like you said, you are going to see these systems more and more frequently in smaller and smaller shops. But there is aspects, even in our shop, where it's like if you only need to run 5 of some part for a sample, or even if it's a 50 or 100 piece run of a somewhat complicated part, it may not be worthwhile to set the robot up to do that. So there will always be some task for that guy who wants to just open and close the door and measure parts all day. But it's going to become limited very quickly.
No, definitely, and that is, I don't want to go too far into it because I don't have it on my notes here, but I do want to touch on it. Like, prototyping is going to be like the ultimate human responsibility, right? Like, I don't see AI really taking that over ever. And it's also like one of the more prohibitively expensive things that has gotten significantly cheaper as far as like compared to ordering a few of a part from overseas or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And now for a quick ad break. Here we have Control Pew's merit badges at controlpew.com. We have the 3011, the AK, the FGC9, the Mac. This is what I have, the AR. It's a great conversation starter for people that may not know or may not be interested in 3D2A. And if you spot a buddy that knows what it is, build some connections while supporting someone in our community. Control Pew does a ton of stuff. For example, the Control Pew Getting Started Guide, which is something I recommend to anybody, those new or even if you just need a refresher. Anything at controlpew.com is 5% off with code LEMONAID, LEMONAID. We have tons of stuff, cleaning mats, flags, posters to rep the community. We also have some Hawaiian button-down shirts. You'll see my Soy Jack wearing it in every episode of Season 1 of Keyholing, as well as you'll probably see me wearing it in real life, the FGC 9 Lives Hawaiian button-down shirt. There's 4 other versions here as well, modeled by PSR. Absolutely, go check out controlpew.com. Use code LEMONAID, LEMONAID, for 5% off your purchase. The Keyholing podcast loves MAF Corp. MAF Corp does a great job getting parts and kits in people's hands for cheap prices while maintaining quality and being a great representative of the 3D2A gun culture. Right here we have their Sunshine 19 Builders combo meal, the Glock Gen 3 that many gun tubers have screeched about that is going away. Go buy it. Well, it is still here, and you can get 10% off anything at MAF using code Lemon Snowcone, Lemon SNOW Cone. But yeah, it builds your whole Glock out here. They now have slides. They have the rails from Aves. They have the DD rails as well. Go check out MAF Corp for all your part needs. My friend Yeezy Print stays the topic of discussion because he makes electric products like this. Are those level 4 plates doormat? Very, very sick. We've got the Hunt the Rich camo shirt, magnets, hats, stickers as well. Arm the Poor, Eat the Rich, a classic, one of his first launches that went very well. Super cool. People really enjoyed this. And my favorite here, I'm not going to say it It is spicy, but it's what the Second Amendment is for. It's actually called the Second Amendment Collection, and you can support the channel by using the link in the video. I'll put it in the description below this video. And in the podcast description as well. Some cool stickers. Your papa didn't run shine through these hollows for you to be a bootlicker. And ain't that right? Salute Easy Prince. Check out AmeriCAN Years of Lead. Kind of drifting into overseas. Something that's brought up frequently that I am not super high on and I think people love to hear your thoughts on is like material cost. So there's this debate as far as using lower cost raw materials from other places as opposed to developing raw materials in the United States. And the way I view it is the raw materials prices that you're getting right now from places like China would be almost impossible to replicate here. Is it like, how do you view balancing those as far as that goes?
I mean, obviously, the more you can support individuals that are in your own country and are local to you, the better it's going to be. And I don't say that just from a patriotic standpoint or anything like that, even though there is an element of it to that. It's purely an economics thing. You know what I mean? You ever see like the pictures of like, you know, fruit is an excellent example where it was grown in South America somewhere, and then it was shipped across the Pacific Ocean to be packaged, and then it was shipped back to America to be sold in a grocery store. Like, that's just inefficient, you know, and a lot of these inefficiencies come from political aspects. You know, it's significantly cheaper to have the labor done in this Southeast Asian country, but it only grows here and it only sells here. Logistically, it's very wasteful, right? I mean, it took time and energy to ship back to the materials. It takes time and energy to ship things all the way from China. Why not just mine the materials in our country and refine them and do it? And that would be far more efficient, right? But it's not as, you know, there's so many nuances to it with politics and labor cost and government subsidies and things like that. And, you know, then you get into tariffs and import restrictions and things like that. And then you have just quality as well. You know, I mean, I'm not a material sourcing expert per se. I know a lot of this has diminished, but in the injection molding field, steel from Austria and Germany was considered significantly higher quality, or at least you could trust the material certs significantly more than materials from China. Again, that's all, it's so extremely complicated that it's hard to really say. And that's why most people just default to the patriotism thing and they go, nope, I only want to buy it from my country because that's patriotic, you know, which, whatever. Us personally, we're more interested in the quality of everything. We don't purchase anything from overseas, really, at all. Everything that we manufacture is sourced from a U.S. mill, as far as aluminum goes. I know there was one time really early on that the mills in the U.S. could not source some of the 17-4 stainless. So I think we got something that was imported through a distributor, and the certs were out of a mill in like Slovenia or some European country. But the Chinese materials, A, they're not that much cheaper now because of the tariffs, and B, they're just not as, in my opinion, they're not as good. The material certs are not necessarily insanely trustworthy. You kind of don't know what you're getting. It's much easier to deal with U.S. suppliers if you ever have an issue, you know.
No, definitely. And I think that's so important too. Like you mentioned, like we kind of talked about the community aspect. Like it's so, and I'll use like a farmer's market example. So like going to a farmer's market and paying more for, let's say, an apple pie. The apples were grown like, I don't know, a few towns over. The milk is from a few towns over, like that made the butter, and a person in your town made it. And so like, unfortunately, we have to assign a monetary value to these things. And I don't think every case is going to be the same. Like there is, like you mentioned, a ton of nuance as far as like specific materials and specific mines and getting permits. I don't really know anything about all that bullshit. In an ideal world, would I love it if every material could be sourced from the United States? Well, who wouldn't? Because it's more jobs, more money. But I understand that's just like not necessarily a reality. One thing that pops up to me that I think of is AmeriCAN Pipe Dream. They made their sick jacket, the bomber style jacket, and a lot of people complained about the price. Like this is the industry I come from, like retail, manufacturing, apparel, footwear, things like that. And a lot of people complained about the price, and it was only like a few $100s. And so unfortunately, the consumer is going to have to pick, and I understand being left in a hard spot, but I really would just encourage people, like, if you can, just try. Like, I don't want to be one of those gay eco people to be like, you're shaving so much smog and shit from not shipping it across the ocean. But it really is just better in every aspect if you can purchase locally and from your, in theory, neighbor.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Some of my neighbors are assholes, and I wouldn't buy something.
That's true. That is true.
There's an aspect of that. It's like a tiny piece of me. Like we're pretty close to Illinois. So like sometimes I'll make the pilgrimage down to the old Micro Center. And like it kind of stings every time I buy something expensive from the Micro Center because like it's local, it's my neighborhood, kind of. I'm not that close to it, but it stings a little bit giving sales tax to the state of Illinois, and especially Cook County.
Yeah, Jesus.
So it's like sometimes your neighbors are assholes, and you don't want to buy stuff from them.
No, definitely, and that's why, like, go ahead.
But one thing I wanted to mention was, there's a lot of talk about like it's really a bigger thing in the oil industry, in the petroleum, and all that. That it's that strategic reserve aspect. It's like one reason why the politics get into play is like, certain countries don't want to use up all their whatever resource because they have to go look for more of it, which there probably is more, but that's expensive, and then there's just that aspect, like you said, of they don't grow kiwis in Wisconsin. If I want some fruit that they don't make, I have no choice but to just get it from someplace else. So, but yeah, I mean, obviously, helping your neighbors and helping build that community around you, it would be ideal. And any restrictions that stop you from doing that are, I would say, morally wrong. I mean, why would you find it appealing to stop me from buying things locally? But you see circumstances where that arises pretty frequently, No,
there are business incentives for companies to purchase things almost exclusively overseas, to use almost exclusively overseas labor, aside from just cost. Like, and so, like, there is like that weird political aspect that the individual can only control so much, right? And so the idea is like you said though, you have to think, and it's like any restriction that puts distance between you and sending money essentially directly to a few towns over, or in the same state, or fuck it, even in the same region, right? Like, to the point where those are entirely detrimental. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think those people are genuinely evil if putting those restrictions in. I think they are evil bastards. And because at the same time, like we haven't really brought that up, businesses are often de-incentivized from producing in America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the restrictions that are in place, you know, I mean, we're in the firearms industry. There's quite a lot of restrictions, but not necessarily de-incentivizing manufacturing here. We're in a weird place in our country where, like, there's a lot of talk about making it easier and increasing manufacturing, but like not actually a lot is being done about it, I guess you could say. But yeah, I think there's a lot more incentive to make things in another country, or lack of disincentive to make it in another country. I would think, you know, China is a good example of that. I mean, it's significantly cheaper to manufacture things in China, and there's really not a lot that our country is doing to proactively encourage business here. They're trying to make it harder to do things in China. They're not making it easier to do things here, which, you know, what's better, negative reinforcement or positive reinforcement, you know?
Definitely, and you bring up a good point. The politicians on both sides, quotations, say the right things, right? We want more jobs here. We want more manufacturing here. We want to use locally sourced materials. We want raw materials to come from here. But at the same time, there's little to no effective, safe mine building going on right now. There's actually negative job growth in the manufacturing sector, whether that's like AI or whatever at this time. I mean, obviously, but still, like, negative growth. And so the people in control are saying the right things, but actually it's hard to believe they give a shit when there's not actually any physical progress to those things happening.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are starting to notice that a lot more than they used to. You know, a good example of that, it's not necessarily manufacturing related, but here in Wisconsin, you know, our Democrats that run for re-election all the time, especially our governor, he rolls out the "I want to legalize marijuana" every single time, and all of them say it a lot, and it has never happened. It's probably never going to happen, and you know, the tinfoil hat conspiracy, it's not really a conspiracy, but you know, it's, you know, maybe if they actually did it, they wouldn't have anything else to run on. You know what I mean? If they finished the job, then people wouldn't be like, oh, we got to keep putting him in so he can do the thing. You know, if they actually got you all the jobs and everything, you know, what would they have to talk about next time there was a re-election? You know, and I know there's a lot of nuance to it. You know, you can't change everything overnight, but like, there's a lot of regulations to manufacturing and, you know, sourcing materials, and there's a lot of things that the EPA does. You know, I'm not saying like completely deregulate everything and get rid of OSHA and have us, you know, completely doing dangerous shit on job sites, but there's a lot of regulations in our country that they don't have overseas that, you know, they're perhaps well-meaning regulations that went a little bit overboard, and other countries just don't give a shit at all, and you know, that allows them to do things significantly cheaper. I think we need to take a hard look at a lot of regulations with the EPA, and you know, maybe not labor laws, but you know, it's a lot of the EPA stuff, in my opinion. Without getting into crazy detail, I think there needs to be a hard look at a lot of those regulations and see what actually is the problem. Because, like you said, you can't just shout from the rooftops. We need to promote manufacturing, and we need to grow America's manufacturing base, but then not actually do a whole lot about it. Yeah, I think there's a lot more. There's a lot of potential for improvement.
There definitely is some nuance, but there's 100% something to what you're saying as far as dangling the carrot, right? And we see this too with Republicans and guns, right? The idea is like, there's a lot of Republicans around election time. We've got to get rid of the NFA, brother. I'm telling you what, every 2A patriot needs to we need to get rid of the NFA. We're going to do it this time.
Yeah.
And then,
to be honest, I don't really notice a lot of politicians calling for the removal of the NFA.
True, that's more recent.
That's more recent, especially because like certain politicians are starting to pick up on that's a really good talking point, and they can get some really fervent supporters by saying that stuff. But like, it's a lot of like just the blanket generic, like, you know, like the Donald Trump, like the NRA endorsed me. I don't understand why gun owners won't vote for me. Like, come on, bro.
No, true. There is like a massive disconnect.
Get some better advisors or something, man. Come on. Like,
yeah, there is like a massive disconnect, and while a lot of what we said has been negative, we've been nitpicky and pointing out specific things. Both of us want the best for American manufacturing and kids to get in it. Like, if you like, I'll say this: there's a ton of people in the 3D printed space who's willing to like mentor and help young or old, just people new to 3D printing, and so I just kind of want to be like, yo, if you have questions or are really interested in making this a career path, like, reach out to someone, start learning CAD. There's people who have started 3D printing and got jobs outside of the gun community, like real people jobs. And so I just want to encourage that, because I think like the worker and inspiring the worker is really the only way we get, because like we can, at the same time while those politicians are yelling, like we could literally get on here every day and find some politician saying bullshit and just bullshitting, you know what I mean? Like, it really is up to each individual to be like, hey, this is what I want. This is what I want to happen. And unfortunately, that's just kind of like where we're at right now. But at the same time, there's so much potential, right? Like the potential for growth for the things we've mentioned, like things being more accessible, AI being a tool, additive manufacturing getting to incredible points in just a short amount of time. There are so many things that make me hopeful at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's incredible opportunity, and that's, like you said, you know, there's so many places to learn and advance your own personal capabilities, and there's a myriad of ways to go about it. But yeah, there are minor aspects that may make you think that it's not possible or not worthwhile, but it's definitely, if it's something you want to do, it's definitely something you should seek out. Don't let your dreams be memes, as they say.
Before we're kind of closing, before we finish up, where do you see the 3D printed gun industry going, as far as what are some parts kits, maybe guns that you see taking off? What are some future projects you at Aves are looking at? Things of that nature.
Sorry, I just opened another drink.
No, you're good, man.
A little frozen. I mean, I guess a good place to start with that would be, you know, where do I see our sort of offering expanding? Obviously, we're in the Mac stuff. We're probably going to keep expanding in that area. It's pretty popular. So there's a bunch of interest in the other calibers that have been available for the Mac 11, like the 5.7. I know there's a couple of developers, Unseen Killer's one of them, that has specifically asked me if I plan on making that, and we do. It's just a matter of figuring out demand and timing and all of that stuff. Barrels are expensive, especially a run of 1,000 of them. So that's an area that we want to expand. Mac 11 and other calibers, Mac 10 in all of those calibers. It's all on the list, on the to-do list. We also, I'd mentioned the contract machining stuff before. We're really trying to expand in that area too, which isn't crazy interesting for our customers per se of our website, just because it's not stuff that we're making that we sell. But I've mentioned on Twitter that we're doing a lot of parts for Lima 6. We're doing a bunch of internal parts for that belt-fed AR upper. So we really, now that we have a good team of guys that are doing manufacturing, and I have some programmers, I have guys running machines, I have people helping with sales and marketing sort of stuff, and advertising. Try to improve in that area a little bit this year, or next year, I should say. But we want to try to move into other other interesting aspects, like the belt fed upper. We think that the Lima 6 project is super cool, and I personally can't wait for him to start working on the 308 version, the AR-10 version. Actually, I'm not 100% sure if it's going to be an AR-10 platform or if it's just going to be a 308 AR-15 upper. But yeah,
and anyone
it's probably not super interesting for like the extreme DIY community,
No, definitely. But at the same time, I recommend, this is one of the builds I recommend, the Mac, the DB alloy, there's so many Mac options. You can find a lower that you like, but it literally is the easiest build to me you can do. Even it's essentially easier than an AR-15. Putting the trigger together is the hardest part for a new person. You put the trigger together, and then literally everything goes together, and you click it in. It is actually as close as you can get to Legos. I've got my Frost upper right here now. I'm gonna be working on. Actually, I want to bring that up. You released your own Mac design, right? You worked with Rice Cutter and Easy to release your own Mac design, correct? And you've got those parts kits available.
Yeah, so I released the Mod Mac. That's what I've been calling it. The files are on Odyssey. I think my Odyssey name is the Aves. I think it's the same as my Twitter handle. If you just Google Aves, AV, 3 E's, and an S. If you Google that or search that on the GunCat index, who we sponsor, excellent website I might add, you'll find me, and you can find the files for that. That was kind of I don't want to slander anybody or anything, but being that we have the base models and we've done so much research, and by research I mean buying a shitload of parts kits and a shitload of original Mac guns and stuff and measuring them, reverse engineering them. Since we had all this data, I thought why shouldn't I make the perfect quote Mac frame that the hammer hits the firing pin at the right angle. Another fun fact, if you look at my Mod Mac, the hammer, the fire control group is actually biased towards the right, because on a normal AR-15 hammer, and you may notice this if you're holding your upper right now, if it's taken apart, the hammer actually rubs on the ejector pin. So a lot of these failure to fires and failure to eject, and the slide not racking really smoothly, it's actually because the hammer's rubbing on that pin, depending on your hammer. Some hammers are narrower than others, but most mil-spec hammers are actually rubbing on your ejector pin. So I actually bias the fire control group, I want to say like 1/8 of an inch to the right. Completely alleviated a lot of those issues. I tried to make like the perfect, dimensionally perfect Mac lower for function testing, and pretty soon here I'm going to release another version of it, an updated version with a couple of little cosmetic fixes. I have a version of it that's going to work better with our AR handguard uppers. It'll have the step files in there, and anybody's more than welcome to remix the thing and do whatever they want with it and get real weird with it. But it's really just kind of my own, mental validation of what the hell's going on and try to make the perfect test platform. Not because there's anything crazy wrong with anybody else's Mac frames, but there are aspects of it, like the hammer hitting that pin, or rubbing on it, I should say, not really hitting it. And I wanted it to be super easy to put together and assemble. The DB alloy, super strong with the side plates, but the side plates are, you got to loosen the screws sometimes to get the upper out because it kind of squeezes it together, and it's just a lot of small screws, and it's like I wanted to completely avoid that aspect. I wanted to be able to take my Mac frame apart in literally 2 seconds by just pushing a pin out, and the whole thing falls apart, so I can get in there and figure out what is wrong with this prototype part that I'm testing. If I'm doing something different, we've tried different coatings on bolts and things like that. I want to be able to take the thing apart super, super fast to get in there because I'm impatient, and some of the Mac frames are kind of hard to disassemble, So
no, definitely, and like the reliability of even the DB alloy is relatively recent. Like you like our good friend Yeezy, like, talked to him about the Mac Daddy. It was a great gun at the time. That's like 3 years old now, over 3 years old. So at the same time, it's like it is the false idea of saying, okay, I'm going to take these aspects, right, and I'm going to put these little things on here that I like, make it easy to take apart. Very sick. It's really simple, like pins and screws. The kit is $18, the Mod Mac kit. It's really not expensive either. Like, this isn't a cost prohibitive build. A lot of people hear Mac and they think, well, it's expensive. No, I mean, it really is not. Like we're talking, like, if you get, like, use a promo code, we're talking under $300 for the whole build. Like, if you get a good deal,
depending on what fire control group you get, but
definitely
get a mil spec fire control group, mag releases. You need Glock mag release, but whatever.
Well, I mean, that is one.
You can definitely get in under $300, and probably including the filament too. It's a good project. It's fun to do. Like you said, the Mac builds, most of them, they go together super easy. I mean, from the printer, I can put a Mod Mac together. Granted, it's my gun. I designed it. I should be the fastest, but I could put a Mod Mac together in like 15 minutes, including removing supports and all of that shit. I mean, it is quite literally one of the easiest things to do. Easier than an AR even. So.
Well, there is one problem with it, and that's we've got an AMB mag release. Why did you want to acknowledge left-handed people exist? That is actually the main problem here.
If you really don't like wrong-handed people that much, you're going to be really disappointed with next week's development, because we actually made a left-handed Mac upper, and we're going to be dropping it here pretty soon. And by a left-handed Mac upper, I don't mean like it just charges on the left side. I mean, we completely flipped it. We mirrored the entire upper, so the ejection port and the charging handle is on the left side of the bolt, or it's on the left side of the upper now.
My head is in my hands. We've lost the war.
I am catering to the what is it, like 10 or 15% of the population that's left-handed. I am specifically catering to the wrong-handed.
Oh man, wow, that's a devastating blow. But no, this is, so we're recording this on Thursday, Wednesday, but this episode will be coming out on Friday. So people listening to it on Friday, be paying attention, because that, you said that's coming out soon.
Yeah. I mean, I'm probably going to drop it by the end of the week. I'm actually logged into the website and kind of poking around in there and working on the webpage right now as we speak. So
awesome.
I'm trying to get it done by the end of the week. We don't have many of them available. The last run of Mac uppers that we did, we only made like 20 of them just as samples for, coding and all that stuff, just to see how it goes. I do have another 250 of them in production right now. We are going to do the right-hand ones first before that. So I just set out the process to do another 1,500 Mac uppers, and I set aside, I think, 250 of them to be, maybe it was only 150, to be left-hand ones. So it'll take a little bit to restock them, and we only got like 20 or 25 of them for the first batch, but they should be dropping towards the end of this week, maybe early next week, maybe over the weekend. It doesn't have a hard date, so got to be on the lookout. Got to follow us on Twitter. Remember that.
Absolutely.
Twitter and Instagram.
And you guys post frequently, like you guys post behind the scenes, the updates, things that are going on, really like transparent as far as like in the industry goes. And so do you have any new colors coming out? Are there any new colors? Honestly, you guys should just go and look through the colors. This amount of colors being offered is actually insane. It's ridiculous.
I want to do more. Ideally, I could offer every single Cerakote color. And we've thought about doing that, where it's like offering every single Cerakote color and just having a lead time for the non-stocked ones. But we don't like taking back orders. You know what I mean? We fulfill orders quite literally. I want to say like 90% of our orders. I'm making up these numbers right now because I don't actually know, but I'm guessing probably about 90 to 95% of our orders go out within 24 hours of you ordering. If it's in stock on our website, we're shipping it the same day or the next day. So we don't like to take back orders. I don't like the free money cheat code of pre-orders. It feels very wrong to me. If you give me money, I'm going to send you the parts immediately. But we have thought about doing every single Cerakote color. It's just a logistics issue.
No, definitely. And like that, you offer so much already. Like, honestly, you offer so much.
Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be some color that somebody wants. And, I've thought about doing kind of like colorways with like different colors of pick rail and different colored Mac or different color upper receiver. It's just a matter of logistics. But yeah. And I mean, the biggest thing is editing the website and product pictures and all that. I'm pulled in so many different directions doing different products and putting out fires in the shop and fixing things. And, it's like spending time on a different Cerakote color oftentimes isn't the most effective use of my time, which alludes towards the next thing. If anybody wants a job, email me. All positions are open. I'll hire anybody for almost anything. I pretty much make a position for every single person I hire. Everybody's got their own special little talent, but also everybody, if it's real bad, everybody's out on the floor running machines. So.
All right. And so if you're in Wisconsin, hit my boy up. And I just checked in my email. Literally every Aves order I've done has gotten shipped the next day. Has gotten marked as shipped, went out the next day. And so, that is the level of service you guys offer. Very sick. I can't recommend them enough. Want to hop into one thing real quick, too. I actually forgot it on our list. I don't know how I could. your biggest partner, PSR. How's it working with PSR? Everyone wants to know. The celebrity. How's it working with PSR?
Our relationship has been pretty good. I mean, a lot of you guys have probably seen the We the Free stuff that we did with him. That was a very in-depth, behind-the-scenes view of our shop, and I swear we're not as weird as we are in the TV show. Maybe we are. I don't know. It's very subjective, but no, it's been good, and he will always receive some of my criticism. I want him to print more stuff. I want him to do more. When did print, shoot, repeat stop printing guns? What happened? You know what I mean?
Wow, he went woke.
Yeah, he did. I don't know what happened. We're gonna have to straighten that guy out or something. But no, me and PSR are pretty good friends. I know. We will probably always, I don't know. Even if something happens to his YouTube channel or something like that, we've got his back. We've been good friends for a long time. I mean, I reached out to him probably the first time in like 2021. Shortly, it was 22. I don't remember. It was like right after he started on YouTube. When he had like maybe 10 to 15,000 subs on YouTube. We reached out and we started talking. So we've known each other for a long time, and he's been up in my shop and I've been down by his place, and we've filmed content out on his range, and we've been his channel sponsor for a couple years now, and it's been a very good relationship. And if you like PSR stuff, I've got some PSR merch going up on our website soon.
Ooh.
Got some stickers, got some new artwork that we were working on with him. So yeah, it's been fun. It's been a good time.
And the last, I've got it pulled up right now, the PSR Aves, the camo tee is just so sick.
It is a pretty cool shirt.
It's absolutely fire. And you mentioned sponsoring the Gun Cat Index, supporting people in the community. Use code INDEX for 10% off at Aves. Check everything out. I can't co-sign them enough. An absolute great dude. I really appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else you wanted to plug, brother?
No, I mean, if you're interested in building a gun, our mission is to have the parts available for your entry-level projects into the 3D printable gun and the DIY firearm space ready for you when you are, and if we like to try to support, like you said, the Gun Cat Index and a lot of these developers that are doing interesting projects, try to do as much as we can to help you guys out and, be a part of the community and all that stuff. So yeah,
based.
That's our mission,
Incredibly based. Thanks again for coming on, man. And we will see you guys next week.
Anytime.